coding. Well, Dino, I would like you to present yourself first. Who are you?
Yes, well, uh, I am. I was because I am now retired. I was teaching history of philosophy and, in particular, medieval philosophy here at the University of Bologna, and I taught also courses in humanities computing. And I think these are my qualifications
Okay, and
for the interview.
okay. So, how do you arrive to the digital humanities?
Well, it was in the late 80s, early 90s. Uh, as I was saying, I was teaching medieval philosophy, and we wanted to uh, produce editions of medieval texts, in particular medieval texts um, that were used to teach logic here at the University of Bologna. And so there were these manuscript texts, and at the beginning we thought of using computer just for transcription, for to save time and to make it easier. But then we soon realized that there was there were problems, and that we couldn't solve these problems with the traditional printed editions, because all the manuscripts were different and they were not collatable in the usual form. They had too many variations and differences. And so we thought of producing a full a set of transcriptions. And at that time, we happened to meet Manfred Thaler, who had developed a system for historical research. And he had this idea of producing data sets that were produced by historians for their research work as an edition. Normally at that time, data sets were stored in archives, and it was difficult to access them or to reuse them. So Manfred's idea was to produce historical data sets as editions of documents. And we seized this idea, and we came to the idea of producing, instead of a database as an edition as a database, because that would allow us to solve our problem. We could organize all our transcription into a database, and the system which was produced by Manfred Thaler at that time could enable us to bind portions of the transcription to portions of the image. At that time, you couldn't do that with personal computers. There were no graphical interfaces, and we had to work on powerful workstations, RISC machines, which we were fortunate enough to have at our disposal in a lab created by IBM here in our university. So we produced a prototype of an edition, and we were able to show the variants with the images, the snapshots of the actual manuscripts in which these variants occurred. So it was a kind of exploded apparatus with the images of all the variants. And in this way, the scholar had the opportunity to check all the variants by himself or herself, and not to rely blindly on the choice of the editor. So, and also this organization of the transcriptions as a database would solve our problem of dealing with texts which were not easily collatable. So that was the first approach to digital humanities, and it became a kind of not a matter of practical convenience, but a matter of a kind of theoretical challenge, because we could approach problems of research with a different method, and the result was to change the method itself of doing edition and historical research. So that was the beginning.
Okay, a great beginning, in fact. So I know you have written an article with Manfred Thaler on markup, and I don't know if you want to tell us something about.
Yes, but first of all, let me try to explain an idea, the idea of digital humanities.
Okay.
That what are digital humanities in my understanding? Well, I must confess that I do not particularly like the term digital humanities. I still would prefer a term which was used some time ago, which is humanities computing. Why am I saying that? Because, as I said, since the beginning, the idea was to solve research problems with computation. And so the idea of humanities computing was a kind of applied computer science or information science, informatics. Well, if informatics deals with the representation of information with suitable data structures, and it deals with the processing of this information with suitable algorithms, with suitable programs. If we take this idea and we apply it to humanities disciplines, the problem becomes that of finding the suitable ways of representing information in your discipline, in your field of study, and to find ways of processing this digital representation, these data structures, to answer research questions which are the research questions of your field of study. So the idea of processing, of computing, was deeply rooted in our understanding of humanities computing or digital humanities. But then it came the age of graphical interfaces in personal computers, the age of the web, and the focus became shifted on representation, on visualizing data, and not so much on processing data. And that's the reason why I still prefer the term humanities computing, because there is still this idea of using computational procedures, computational methods, computational techniques to deal with research questions in your own discipline, as for instance producing an edition or something like that. So that's a kind of premise. Well, in the session we organized with Manfred Thaler in Hamburg at the conference, Digital Humanities Conference last year, we started from an idea of the evolution of digital humanities practices, which went along with the evolution of technology. As I was saying, at the time of mainframes, there was no possibility of visualizing your data. But the only output you could get, it was a printed report of your case. So the idea of visualizing was totally absent, and the main focus was on processing. Then, as I said, it came the age of the web, and the focus, the attention shifted towards representing source materials, producing digital images or digital text transcriptions, just put these materials on the web to visualize them and to make them available for use by researchers. And now, as for instance John Answorth has noted, there is a trend of going back to building tools to process the data that have been produced. And so in this session, we approached the problem of markup and of the adequacy, in particular, of embedded markup to solve all the problems of the digital text representation. Well, the basic idea was to go further and to overcome the limitations of embedded markup. The standard for text transcription and text representation, the markup standard which was developed is are the guidelines of the Text Encoding Initiative, which is fair enough for representing the text, representing textual phenomena, but not so much for processing textual phenomena and textual materials. Also, in text representation, there are particular problems like overlapping hierarchies, as it is called in technical terms. Why is that? Because the markup language, which is used by the text encoding initiatives, assigns to the text a kind of hierarchical structure. So it's not possible to represent easily overlapping hierarchy. Just to give an example, for instance, the phenomenon of enjambement in verse. So if you divide the text and you assign a structure to your text, to your poem by verse, if there are phenomena which go across the boundaries of the verse, you cannot easily represent them. So there are now techniques and proposal of developing forms of standoff markup to solve this kind of problems. For instance, by Desmond Schmidt, who produced a multi-version document format, as he calls it, to solve the problem of overlapping hierarchies. So, just to conclude, there is a big debate about the adequacy of embedded inline markup on one side and the advantages of offline standoff markup on the other. My personal idea is that the true approaches to markup are severed, are distinct, are different, but they are related. And in order to have a satisfactory representation and presentation of textual data, the best choice would be to use both forms of markup. One, the embedded markup is more suitable for representing syntactical phenomena, whereas standoff markup is more suitable to represent semantical markup, semantical properties, to annotate the text. And in my opinion, the problem becomes that of finding proper ways of representing a model, a dynamical model, to represent the relationship between the two forms of markup. Just to give a concrete example to understand the problem. Punctuation is a form of markup, and markup can be thought of as a form of diacritical notation to represent some properties of the text. Markup is a kind of diacritical which can be considered both part of the text and also a description of the text. So it's a self-referential way of representing properties of the text. And punctuation has the same function. For instance, punctuation is part of our writing system. It's part of the text. But it gives us information on this syntactical and semantical structure of the text. For instance, if you change a comma, put a comma, or take off a comma, it may change the whole interpretation of the text. I came across recently a case in Spinoza, and all the interpretation of a very important notion in Spinoza was dependent on the presence or the absence of a single comma. So that does to give an idea of how the problem of relating the textual variance, syntactical textual variance on one side, and semantical variance, interpretational variance on the other, becomes a crucial problem. And I think that now, with the semantic web technologies, we are in a position to try to meet this challenge and to find viable and proper solutions. So more or less, that was the problem which we try to present and to discuss in our joint session at last year's Digital Humanities Conference in Hamburg.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was a pleasure to hear you.
Okay, it was a pleasure for me to talk to you and to answer your questions.